in high definition.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Bob Clausen.
And I'm Jessica Dean. It's a world many of us never see, but it's happening right here in our state. Humans being bought and sold for sex.
And Little Rock is a recruiting spot for some of these modern-day slaves. In a KRK4 News investigation tonight, Marci Manley takes us into the dark underworld of human trafficking in Arkansas.
And I really didn't know what was happening until it was too late and there was no way out. I was right at 14 years old when the first time I was sold.
How much would you pay for a piece of a person's humanity?
No little girl wakes up one day and says, oh, I think I'll grow up and become a prostitute.
How far can a soul bend before it breaks?
I knew that I would rather die than to live like that. It's a bad place to be.
Those questions defined Louise Allison's existence from the age of 14.
I was bought, sold, traded, drugged, raped, and beat.
Locked into a life without love, deprived of dignity, a slave to the streets.
It's hard to explain to someone who hasn't lived it how scared and shame-filled a person is when they're actually living the life.
After 25 years of trying to forget,
Gratitude that it's not me. And shame because it used to be.
She's stepping out from the shadows of shame to change the fates of others caught in the human trafficking trap.
If there is any way that one life could be changed, one life can be saved by me getting out and talking about the horrors that happened to me at that time, then I'm willing to do it.
Our organization, Safe Places, being one of those.
Many of these girls are runaways and they have no place to go. They're befriended by someone who they think is their friend, and the next thing you know it, they're being sold.
Doug Chenault and Louise formed the Partners Against Trafficking Humans, or PATH, initiative to rehabilitate rescued victims. During an unveiling ceremony on November 3rd, Louise publicly revealed her past horrors for the very first time.
I was a living example of what happens to little girls that play grown-up.
According to the FBI, more than 300,000 children have been sold by sex traffickers in the United States. In the global trade, 1 in 4 sex slaves are Americans who simply vanished. And each year, 13,000 kids are snatched up and sold for sex.
And a lot of us would like to think that this is a dark world that only exists in places like New York and LA, but the truth is our daily commute cuts right through a human trafficking corridor.
Some of these kids end up like that.
Pulaski County Sheriff Doc Holliday is familiar with human trafficking in central Arkansas, dating back to his first Vice Squad sting in the 1980s.
The first prostitute that I arrested was a 17-year-old runaway from Hot Springs.
Continuing to modern-day slaves soliciting undercover officers.
No one deserves to be bought and sold in this fashion, in any fashion.
I mean, this is what I'd be doing.
This woman, who we'll call Beth, believes she was coming to Little Rock for a job training seminar.
He said he had a job working in an office.
Instead, she's arrested in a prostitution sting after the man who brought her here forced her to turn tricks to pay back money he fronted her.
The only way I could go home, he said, is if I did this. It's the only way I could get the money to go home.
Arkansas serves as a human trade hotspot because of I-40, which spans the United States. A van next to you could be carrying someone that's being bought and sold against their will.
Vans, trucks, any way to transport a victim, yes.
Offering countless truck stops for selling what's known as commercial companion services. Journalist Dorothy Cox has been investigating the truck stop sex trade in Arkansas, which happens more than we might like to imagine.
You can only sell a drug once, but you can sell a human being over and over and over.
With the shocking realities of what these victims endure, it's hard to believe there's not a facility in the state offering a refuge for those rescued from the clutches of crime.
They're brutalized, they're held against their will, and they're used to make money.
In the U.S., only 1,000 beds are available for sex trafficking victims. Without a safe place off the streets, many will return to what they know.
You can't just bring somebody in off the street that's been beaten into submission and expect them to be able to walk out in 2 weeks and be back having a normal life.
Our clothes were filthy, and I felt and looked like trash.
That's what I felt like I was worth. That's what I felt like was my life.
The bruises may fade, the broken bones will mend, but without therapy,
I don't
miss having to have sex with men that I don't know.
The scars on these suffering souls can be much harder to heal.
I don't want anybody to have to spend 25 years like I did hiding behind the shame of what happened when I was too young to know any better.
In the end, those like Louise are simply trying to help victims who escape from this dark underworld driven by greed, where hope and dignity are always for sale. Now, for many of the victims who have escaped the dark reality of human trafficking, they really do need a place to turn, which is Path's purpose, and it is relying on the community to get involved to stop this really tragic trade from happening in our state.
You were just struck listening to that. Only 1,000 beds in the entire country for these victims. So obviously these organizations trying to do what they can. What do they need? How do they get what they need?
They need a lot of things right now. I mean, really, the first part that you start with is they need money, because you've got to build a facility because it doesn't exist. But they also need people who are willing to just volunteer their time and expertise in things like medical fields and counseling. And so there's a big opportunity for people to step forward and really offer their services if they can't donate money. And they can find out how to do that at arkansasmatters.com.
What does the sheriff say what the probability is of prosecuting the people involved with this, behind a lot of this?
Finding the traffickers is actually harder than finding those who have been trafficked, because a lot of these people suffer from something akin to Stockholm Syndrome. They feel a sort of alliance to them because they have been beaten into submission, and so a lot of times they won't turn over the names of those people. They're scared, and they're scared for their family because these people know where they are. So that's a big, difficult part of this process, is prosecuting those who are doing this to people.
Sure.
All right, fascinating and somewhat unsettling insight.
Very much.
Marci, thanks very much.
Thanks, Marci.